This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us. A little later on, Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com and Night School, and we'll do a little stakes recap with Jeremy coming up a little after the bottom of the hour. Mike Henry from Tampa Bay Downs. He's going to preview their meet, tell us what's up there, any changes, the new faces we'll keep our eyes on down at Tampa. As it is opening day down at Tampa, we get to watch the Envy weather down there, the horse racing from Tampa. Sun, warm weather, as I said before. I'd love to get down again this year. I didn't get a chance last year, but it's always great to be down there in the wintertime, sit in the grandstands, short sleeve shirts. If we can't be there, it's fun to watch, though, and just kind of dream about it. So Mike Henry from Tampa Bay coming up a little later on. Always want to remind you of some of the activities here. Been talking about it all week because there's some nice stuff at the Clubhouse Racebook this week. Before we do that, just do want to remind you, we are still in Bet 50, Get 50. If you don't yet have a Capital Bets wagering account, join up. For new folks on the Capital Bets wagering account side, they will get the Bet 50, Get 50 promotion. That means sign up for a new Capital Bets account. Once you wager 50 into that, Capital OTB throws in another $50. You can't beat that. So again, if you haven't gotten a Capital Bets wagering account yet, now's a great time to do it. Take advantage of that promotion. Remind you one more time that the new 8-ball pool league is forming down here at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. That'll be on Thursday nights starting tomorrow night, December 5th. The matches start at 6:30. Again, that's the Clubhouse Racebook right here, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. If you like 8-ball, come on down. Should be great. Have a lot of fun on Thursday nights down here in the Clubhouse Racebook. And finally, do want to keep reminding you all week long about the Capital Cup Championship, the final monthly handicapping series for 2013. Wraps up on December 7th, this Saturday, right here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Capital Cup Championship. The winner is going to get a seat at the NTRA Daily Racing Forum National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. Again, Saturday, right here at the Clubhouse Racebook, $200 entry fee, maximum of 3 entries per person. You can find out more info about the Capital Cup on CapitalOTB.com. And if you get sent out to Vegas, you can see our friend Gary Johnson from Beulah Park. We have him on every Tuesday, and he noted yesterday he's qualified. He got a couple of entries, so he'll be out there at Vegas, and I'm sure you'll run into some other familiar faces out there as well. So again, the Capital Cup Saturday right here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Do want to note, I pulled up, actually during the Handicappers Report, I was kind of trying to keep a running look. The International Jockeys Challenge out in Hong Kong was essentially going on right now. I think it's probably wrapped up, and I'll check here on my tablet as we go. But it kicked off about 7:40 our time this morning with race number 5 in Hong Kong. The rooting interest for us is Mike Smith and Gary Stevens. And race number 5 at Hong Kong earlier this morning. It's night racing over there, so the first race for us was 7:40 a.m., which was 8:40 p.m. their time in Hong Kong. But again, it went off a little more than a couple hours ago, about 2.5 hours ago. The 5th race, Mike Smith winds up running 4th. Gary Stevens 12th and last. So Gary Stevens off to a little bit of a slow start in the Hong Kong Jockey Challenge. And again, there are 12 jockeys, 12 of the top jockeys in the world participating. Race number 6 pops up on the tablet, and Mike Smith 3rd in race number 6 out at Hong Kong. Gary Stevens winds up 9th. So again, Gary Stevens, after the first 2 events in the chasing mode, we'll wait for the tablet to warm up here with race number 7. And it's probably completed by now. Because it was races 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm assuming they're all completed. Race number 7, the 3rd leg of the 4-leg series. Mike Smith winds up running 5th. Gary Stevens 11th. So it looks like a tough evening out in Hong Kong for Gary Stevens. Mike Smith is adding up what could be some decent points here. I don't know if there are enough points to win. But and then the final leg, which is complete. Smith tosses in a 10th place finish. Gary Stevens an 11th place finish. So again, I don't have the totals here, but I'm assuming with their finishes, it would probably be Mike Smith may have had enough points in those early races to at least be up the list a little bit. But Gary Stevens was pretty much trailing in all 4 of the events. Again, the International Jockeys Challenge out there at Hong Kong, which is an event leading into the big weekend out there, Hong Kong International races. The rooting interest for us in the actual races will be King Creesa and Little Mike. King Creesa, I've noted on the show earlier this week, came down with a little travel sickness upon arrival. Jeremiah Engelhardt noted on his Twitter feed over the last day or so that King Creesa had been out on the racetrack, and I guess it looked okay. So it seems to have rebounded back. But certainly that's never a good sign, a week out from the race, to have to be treated with the antibiotics and be a little under the weather. We'll keep our fingers crossed, because certainly that's a great story. But King Creesa, Little Mike will be the horses that we'll be rooting for on Saturday, the Hong Kong International races. And they've got a stellar international field of horses for that series of races in Hong Kong. Noted this earlier on the Handicappers Report, numbers for, and I alluded to it yesterday as well as the news started to come out. The numbers at Churchill, a little bit disappointing. We had Jenny Reese on with us from the Louisville Courier-Journal on Monday, and she talked about the traditional fall meet being maybe a little bit disappointing. She pointed to potentially they're wondering if maybe that September meet played into it somehow, just mentally there wasn't the same kind of buzz coming into the traditional fall meet. But certainly, Jenny mentioned it, and the folks at Churchill have mentioned it as well in the press releases they put out looking at the numbers. You know, they're kind of surrounded now by slot states, so there's competition from other racetracks with slots-fueled purses, and it's making it a little more difficult for them. The daily average handle dropped 15% at this Churchill Fall meet. Now, total wagering was up 1%. But the problem is there was 4 more days. So it was up 1%, but with a 4-day longer meet. So the numbers were disappointing, certainly. The average purses went down fairly significantly, 22%. That's not good, certainly for the horsemen. I did note earlier also, one of the articles also coming out of the Louisville Courier-Journal talked about the fact that of 52 turf races, 20 of those were washed off the turf. That meant there were 74 scratches. So that affected field size and certainly also affected handle. So the weather didn't cooperate necessarily this year as well. But disappointing numbers coming out of that Churchill fall meet. So we'll keep our eyes on that in Kentucky. They're still, like a lot of states, they have nots chasing slots down there, so far unsuccessfully. Also, a jurisdiction with some problems of their own up there in Ontario, where they took the slots away from the racetracks. They okayed it. They gave it to the racetracks. Things were going great. And then the government said, no, we're taking the slots away from the racetracks. That's been an ongoing story for the past 6 months or a year. We had Elisa Blow on with us regularly from Fort Erie earlier this fall, right after the Saratoga meet, up until maybe a month or so ago when their season ended. And she would handicap every day. And that then brought me in, and I was following some of that Fort Erie racing. Kind of fun and competitive. At the end of the season, Elisa gave us some of their numbers, which were very good, and they felt that they had put together a season that would afford them some relief, perhaps, from the government going forward. That didn't turn out to be the case. When the government put out a new plan for horse racing going forward, Fort Erie was kind of ignored. They mentioned something about a festival meet. Well, over the past few days, Fort Erie has unveiled plans for a festival meet. They have said the CEO up there is quoted as saying, the Premier said we need a festival, so we came up with a festival. Apparently it wasn't good enough that Fort Erie was the only track to increase attendance, increase on-track wagering, increase food and beverage sales, so we've added something else. And those were essentially the numbers Elisa gave us as well. They were putting up very good numbers across the board, but the government just kind of ignored that. We'll see. They're kind of coordinating something with the Chinese New Year, which is the New Year of the Horse. They're going to have some kind of a celebration. It's not fully fleshed out yet, but they're looking at perhaps next year having some kind of a festival-type meet at Fort Erie. We'll see how that shakes out. That just seems like, you know, you look over at racing in in Great Britain, that's kind of, they'll bounce around, and tracks will have these little short meets, but it's just a very different mentality and a very different organization for horse racing over there. I'm not quite sure how this will work out at Fort Erie, but I'm glad to see they're at least making an effort, and potentially Fort Erie is going to be back in the mix for 2014. Certainly they're trying to come up with something to have racing there. We'll keep our eyes on that. Hall of Fame has announced the next additions to their media roll of honor. It's something they added a few years ago, as opposed to having a Hall of Fame necessarily. Adding media members to the Hall of Fame, they added something called the Media Roll of Honor, which is essentially the Hall of Fame recognition for racing media members. The recognized this year include Kent Hollingsworth, George Ryall, and Andy Beyer. Andy Beyer gets on the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame Media Roll of Honor. Beyer, of course, developed the popular Beyer Speed Figures, writes for the Washington Post, regular columnist for the Racing Forum. The other, Kent Hollingsworth, he was the editor of the Blood Horse magazine from 1963 until 1986. And George Ryall was he wrote under the pen name, and I have to admit, I don't remember him, wrote under the pen name Audax Minor, and wrote a column for the New Yorker at the racetrack from 1926 until 1978. So again, they'll be honored at next year's Hall of Fame ceremonies. Andy Beyer among those being honored by the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. The Kentucky Equine Drug Research Council voted 4-2 in favor of recommending to the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission to adopt the National Uniform Medication Rule. So this is yet another jurisdiction falling into line with these medication rules that seem to be widening in acceptance to what could be essentially a national medication policy, and I think that's what the racing industry needs and has looked for. It started out with the Mid-Atlantic states coming up with a uniform policy and has slowly spread. I'm not sure if some of these minor jurisdictions will jump on board. As my partner Steve Bick has said on when we sat in here on Loose on the Lead, the major players that we have to wait to jump on board, Florida and Louisiana, who maybe are termed as loose cannons perhaps in this category, but we need them to jump on board. Again, there'll be some maybe minor jurisdictions that don't. I'm not sure they're really, we have to be that concerned about, a Colorado jumping on board or not. But certainly you want players like Florida and Louisiana in the mix. Otherwise, it seems like most, if not all, of the major players are in line or falling in line. So it looks like we will get effectively a national medication policy, and that's good for everybody. It's good for the game, it's good for the PR of the game, and it's good for the various horsemen who move their horses state to state, where for years rules have been not only different, sometimes very different. Other state news, Illinois, I mentioned this earlier on the Handicappers Report. Illinois, which has been in flux now for a couple of months, waiting for legislation that essentially addresses ADWs in the state. But that is important because money from there goes to fund the oversight, the state oversight of horse racing. Without that money, there isn't the state oversight, and if there's not the state oversight, the horse racing can't take place. So it's a series of dominoes. This legislation has to be passed so the funding can be in place for the state racing oversight to take place. And then from there, they can come out with a full racing schedule. If that's not in place, the schedule gets contracted, and severely contracted. Well, a few weeks ago, the legislature in Illinois was in session. They didn't vote on this issue because the horse racing industry itself was in conflict. Subsequently, over the past week and a half or so, the Illinois horse racing parties have come together, put a united front, and recommended legislation that works for everybody to the Illinois legislature. Well, the Illinois legislature was in session on Tuesday and didn't act on this. And this was their only day in session until January. The deadline for all this to happen is January 31st. They won't be back in session until January 29th for a single day. So I think everybody in Illinois now is just kind of keeping their fingers crossed that nothing falls in the path and nothing comes up that will prevent this from being acted on January 29th. I think they expected it to be acted on yesterday, but it didn't happen. So Illinois in a little bit of flux now as well. We'll keep our eyes on that as we move forward. As we go into the break, we're going to take a look at a race from this past weekend at Churchill Downs. Saturday was the Stars of Tomorrow card, and we're going to watch one of those races. Over the weekend, I pulled up the Gold Hawk race, which was the final race on that Stars of Tomorrow card. That's a 2-year-old that I think will be worth watching going forward. Tapiture won the Kentucky Jockey Club for Steve Asmussen and Winchell, the owner. Well, it was Steve Asmussen and Winchell in the last race with Gold Hawk winning in the career debut. So I think, as I say, that'll be one to keep our eyes on going forward. And I just wanted to pull up one other maiden debut winner from Saturday at Churchill, another horse that could be interesting to keep our eyes on. Pretty nice effort here, 17-1. We're going to watch the career debut of Bourbonize for trainer Kellen Gorder and Bourbon Lane Stables. Sean Bridgemahan is on board. Going to watch the entire race as we go into the commercial. It's a 6-furlong event, maiden special, 12 horses entered. The favorite in here was Spirit of Freedom, went off at 8-5. Spirit of Freedom is a horse coming off a second-place finish in its career debut for Eddie Keneally. That horse is going to wind up finishing 4th. As I say, however, we're going to watch in the career debut, Bourbonize. Could be one to watch going forward, winning pretty nicely here at odds of 17-1. Stars of Tomorrow Day down at Churchill Downs this past Saturday. So again, just another 2-year-old that's of interest to keep our eyes on going forward. That'll take us into the break. When we come back, we're going to take a look back at some of the stakes action from the weekend with Jeremy Plump. Stay tuned.
Last one going forward. In the gate. And they're off. Towards the outside, Long Station broke very alertly, so too Aggrandizement, and out very wide High Ransom. Through on the inside, Doubly Distinct, and it's now Doubly Distinct who has come through and takes the lead. Doubling Up is now chasing in second, Aggrandizement, and on the outside High Ransom, these are the first 4. A break of 3 lengths back to Bourbonize, who's racing in 5th. Long Station the Grey in 6th, and then Spirit of Freedom is in 7th. On the inside is Braciliano, followed 2 lengths away by Aniar. Then there's a further break opening up to Ulaanbaatar, and then towards the inside is Shared Life, and out the back of the field is Rouse. 22-2, that opening quarter mile. On the turn, 3/8 from the wire. Doubly Distinct runs the rail, has the lead. Doubling Up racing in second. Around the outside, High Ransom is now being driven and drops back. Making ground, Bourbonize on the inside, and then Long Station. There's a break opening up to Aggrandizement. To the rail is Spirit of Freedom as they race inside the final 3/16, and it's Bourbonize who now has the lead. Challenging on the inside, Long Station who has the rail. Down the outside, Doubly Distinct back to 3rd. They're racing down towards the final 16th. It's Bourbonize and Sean Bridgemahan by 2.5 lengths to Long Station, and it's a winning debut here for Bourbonize. Bourbonize wins in second, Long Station. Staying on eye-catchingly, Ulaanbaatar got 3rd, and in 4th, Spirit of Freedom.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right, the 2013 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes and a seat at the 2014 National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month, the Capital Cup on December 7th. So sign up today online at capitalotb.com or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook. And don't forget our Showviver series, Capital OTB's online handicapping contest.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. As it is Wednesday morning, we're always happy to be joined by Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com and Night School. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Seth. Good to be with you.
And you mentioned last week that for the holidays you thought you would be in our area for a little while. How was the visit?
We had a good time. We did the Polar Express ride with the family,
nice.
And we had a good weekend, a lot of good dining in Saratoga, and my diet got thrown way off.
That's what Thanksgiving's all about, baby. It's we're all in the same boat there. Always on Wednesday, we like to give a little shout out and look back at the archive of Night School, which is held Tuesday nights, the nice online fan education program you folks at horseplayernow.com do. Tell us what was going on last night, and I believe this was the last session for the year?
It was the grand finale for 2013. Yeah, it was our 40th week in a row, and we do 40 weeks each season. This was our third year completing now, so the 120th Night School, and we did a fan's choice where we had fans vote for the topic they wanted to see, and we kind of combined a couple of the ideas together that we got in the suggestions, and we did swinging for the big hit. We had people who were trying to identify long shots, people who wanted to play the big exotic wagers. So we kind of mixed it together, and we got some of our handicappers together from Horse Player Now, Caden Bradar, Brian Netto, who's a regular on your show, Brian W. Spencer, who's the paddock handicapper now down at Fairgrounds. They joined Joe Christofek and myself for the finale, and we discussed strategies for attacking the long shots and strategies for trying to play for that big hit. So it was a very good session last night, and it wrapped up a really successful year. We had a great year this year in Night School.
And that says something in itself. You put out the, it's up to the fans to decide the topic. What do they come up with? Let's find some long shots. That's what we all love.
Everybody wants that big one. It's that holy grail that excites you to make you want to play the next time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, this wraps up Night School. As you said, you had 40 sessions. When does Night School kick off next year? Do you know?
We're working on the planning stages right now, but our traditional opening is usually the last week of February or the first week of March, depending how the calendar falls and how the 40 weeks will fall in 2014, and when we can get all of our sponsors lined up and all that kind of stuff. But look for a very similar kind of schedule. I think we're going to make some tweaks and twists to it and make it even better next year. But I think we'll look at a similar kind of date. It'll be the end of February, the beginning of March.
Very good. So we'll look forward to that. And speaking of looking forward to, just wanted to pick up, obviously, we've had you on and talking a lot about the Triple Crown season the past few years once the beginning of the year comes, because you put out the countdown to the Crown column. What do you have planned for that this year?
Well, I'll tell you what, Seth, we're working on a really exciting project right now. For years, my entire life, really, I've been following sports magazines and the preseason annuals, the Lindy's, the Phil Steele's, the Street and Smith, the Sporting News, and all the different sports. And for years, I've been saying we need something like that in horse racing. And we're in production right now on the first ever Countdown to the Crown preseason annual. It's going to be a full-fledged magazine, about 150 pages in length, previewing all of the major 2-year-olds, the big meets and recap, our big, huge horses, the watch list, the 3-year-olds. It'll take you through every single prep race the entire season with historical facts and trends about each of those preps so that you can go back and refer to it all season long. And the best part about it, it's going to be free. It's an online publication. I'm working on the sponsors right now, but we have Oaklawn Park already committed, and also the Preakness, the Maryland Jockey Club, committed as a title sponsor. They're going to help present this for free. It'll be an online publication. You'll be able to view it on your smartphone, on your laptop, on your PC, on your iPad. It'll be compatible to any of those kind of instruments, and you'll be able to download it and check it out every week, free. And then the Countdown to the Crown column will debut then as well at the same time at the beginning of January. So all this stuff is going to be ready right after the first of the year, and it's an exciting time.
Oh, nice, and we will certainly alert people when that comes up. And speaking of the 3-year-olds Triple Crown Trail, just want to ask if you had any thoughts on the future pool. Was there anything notable there to you? What was notable to me? I thought 4 to 5 on all others was kind of generous.
Yeah, I think there's a scare factor. I guess people don't want to go lower than 4 to 5. But yeah, I thought more closer to 2 to 5 would look realistic. But when you have 24 entrants, 4 to 5 is awfully stiff, on a favorite. You have to look at it from a pari-mutuel standpoint. But in a fair odds standpoint, I'm with you. I think 4 to 5 is an overlay. And that far out and getting, the entire world other than 23 horses. I think it was a good idea for Churchill to try it while they were during a live race meet, and see what would happen with the walk-up business and putting it in their track program. The rest of the year, in January, February, or March, they're not live racing in Louisville. And so, it's all simulcast handle and online handle for them then. So it was an interesting experiment. I'd be curious to see if they'll do it again.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how it shakes out. And as I said on the show earlier this week, when the first Saturday in May comes around, I'm going to go back to that list and see how many of that 23 are actually getting into the gate. Because
typically when they do that first pool in January, it's usually about 14, I believe, is about the average. 14 of the 24 will make the Derby field on average on that first pool when they go all the way to January, and a lot more has shaken out by then than what we saw here in November. So I would estimate you're going to see something in that 8 to 10 range may make the gate, and I think that would be pretty successful.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. All right, and speaking of 3-year-olds, let's go back and start our look with some of the stakes races over this past very fruitful and fun stakes weekend across the country, actually. And we're going to kick things off, as I say, speaking of 3-year-olds, by looking at the Clark. We got the stretch run here. It was the 2 big horses, but it was the 2 big horses doing what they had to do and giving the fans all they can want coming down the stretch. Looked like Game On Dude probably had it all his own way late, but then Will Take Charge does what he does, put it into gear, and gets up there by a head. 2 to 1 was Will Take Charge. 6 to 5 was Game On Dude. Will Take Charge gets it done, and you have to think sews up the 3-year-old Eclipse.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. He's going to put himself into a little bit of a horse of the year discussion in a year where that category isn't super defined, other than maybe a Wise Dan at the top. And then you wonder who else would be on the ballot. I think he really put himself into the mix for. Definitely is going to wrap up the 3-year-old title. I don't think there's any question about it. This race was eerily similar to the one in your backyard, the Travers. I mean, in the role of Moreno today, starring with Game On Dude. I mean, he looked gone at the 8th pole. And Will Take Charge just kind of looked like, he's never going to get there. He's never going to get there. He's just kind of plugging. And then boom, at the end, he got that surge. And, we've got everything here except Eric Gio claiming there was a buzzer involved. And it was just a similar replay to what we saw in the Travers. And that just shows that Will Take Charge has advanced his game to another level, because he always had talent. But what he didn't have was any consistency whatsoever. It was a completely up and down horse. Look at his races at Oaklawn in the spring. He was up and down, and now he is consistent. He's firing every time he goes out, and that's the sign of a horse who's really put it together now.
And it's interesting. You bring up he may have thrown his hat into the Horse of the Year conversation. I wasn't even thinking in that direction, but there has been that buzz out on the internet. There was the Don Agris column, the Sports Network syndicated column, going in that direction earlier this week. I just look at the way he fizzled in the Triple Crown races and have trouble pulling the picture. Clearly, he's the best 3-year-old, given what the rest of the class has done, and he definitely ran very well late in the year. But I think if you look at the year as a whole, it's tough to use him over Wise Dan. Again, January
I agree.
to December.
Yeah, I'm trying to fill out the ballot underneath Wise Dan. There's going to be 3 finalists announced for Horse of the Year. Wise Dan's going to be one of them. Did anybody in the Distaff division do enough to be thrown in there? Princess of Stillmar probably lost any chance of that discussion with the Breeders' Cup. Who are those 2nd and 3rd horses? Mucho Macho Man, I believe, is 2 for 5 on the year. He'll probably end up on the ballot, on the strength of his great Breeders' Cup Classic performance and his win in the Awesome again. He put it together at the end of the year. Who's that 3rd horse to get on there? Game On Dude is a season-long kind of honor, going all the way back to Charlestown and Del Mar and the races he won early in the year. It's interesting to come up with a 3rd horse to kind of get on the ballot, but I think Wise Dan has it absolutely wrapped up.
All right, let's shift our attention now to another big race on the holiday weekend. That was the Cigar Mile, which top to bottom was great. We're watching them come out of the gate here. We're going to watch the whole race. Watch number 8, Golden Sense. Golden Sense will have a little trouble at the start, but then we'll get up into the mix. If you watch the head-on, you can see that Golden Sense does kind of get bumped pretty badly as Saratoga Snacks gets that bad start, and outside and inside of him, they kind of come together and bump, and Golden Sense was in that mix. But then Golden Sense gets up in the hunt. However, that start may have been an excuse for him. I will remind people, and that's why we pulled up the whole race, want to once again let people show or see Groupie Doll. Now, clearly now, the number 3 horse is going to move up here as we get towards the end of the backstretch, and keep your eyes on number 3 Clearly Now on the turn as that one clips heels. Right behind Clearly Now is Groupie Doll. She also has to pull up, and folks should know that, because given her 4th place finish, and this was a much tougher field than she faced last year in the Cigar Mile, but I think this 4th place finish from Groupie Doll is decent. Verrazano's 3rd place finish is okay. Private Zone ran very well at 32-1, almost holding on, but eventually gets run down by a very nice flat out for Bill Mott. So take nothing away from the winner. I don't know whether anyone was going to catch flat out, but I think there was some performances in here that maybe could be overlooked. And I will also mention, Jeremy, you talked about Brian Nadeau, who I had on the program with us. Your colleague had him on last Friday, and he really liked Clearly Now, and I feel bad for those Clearly Now folks, because certainly that's a horse with the trouble that probably could have run better than the finishing position. But your thoughts on the Cigar Mile?
I agree with you. There were several horses with excuses in there, and you got beat by a quality opponent who got a good pace set up, flat out as a horse who, now is pushing, $3.5 million in earnings. Just an outstanding 7-year-old who just keeps keeping on. He was a good 3-year-old with Scooter Dickey at Oaklawn back several years ago, and since he's gone to Bill Mott, he's risen his game to a new level and maintained that level for several years. His performance in Breeders' Cup Classic notwithstanding, he's had a really consistent year. He's top 3 almost every time out, and has run well in all the big dances. You didn't think at a mile at Aqueduct that was really in the wheelhouse of Flat Out, and it just goes to show how good he is. On the right day with the right setup, his class and his class is able to overcome that lack of maybe brilliant speed that some of the other horses had. If you would have told me at a mile distance Flat Out could beat a Verrazano or a Golden Sense, you would say probably not. At a mile and a quarter would be more his game, and especially at Belmont where he's so good. I thought this was a really good race. I thought Verrazano ran better than I thought he could. Saratoga Snacks obviously had the horrible start. So many trouble lines Clearly Now, Groupie Doll. I think the top 5 in this race all take something positive out of it, and any of them coming out of this race would be awfully dangerous against any lesser competition. This just happened to be a race where there were 5 or 6 horses really good, and they all ran pretty good.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning again, we talked about this earlier the week with one of the guests brought it up. Flat Out, Game On Dude, Will Take Charge, all came out of that Breeders' Cup Classic. So a little bit of a key race maybe, the Breeders' Cup Classic this year. Let's shift our attention now to the Remsen, and we'll look at that and the Jockey Club down in Kentucky. And these are going to be right in your wheelhouse, because I'm sure these will be horses that will be prominently mentioned in that Countdown to the Crown preseason magazine. The Remsen this year, we're going to pick it up on the backstretch, because you want to see Honor Code get up and sit on this pace, and there has been a lot of discussion about this pace, which was just crazy. 25 and change, 52 and change, 117. I think Honor Code was taken out of his game plan. Now, other folks have said, and I have no real disagreement, that given the fractions, he really wasn't out of his game plan. But I think horses that come from behind like to have targets to shoot at. So I think it's their placement in the field as much as the clock. So I think he was a little bit out of his comfort zone. He's right up there, the number 4 horse, Honor Code, sitting on this early pace. It was a dawdling pace. Honor Code will then make a move coming into the stretch. Cairo Prince goes by, and you think Honor Code's probably done. So I give Honor Code a couple of check marks in the positive column, being up on the early pace, which again, it was slow, but I think tactically it was kind of out of his comfort zone, and then doing something you hardly ever see horses do, coming back in the stretch on the inside. So I think Honor Code, final time and the early fractions maybe will leave us with some question marks about this race, but I still think Honor Code did what he had to do.
Oh, I agree with you on almost every single thing he said, including that point about positioning in a race versus time. I think it's folly to think that a horse runs 25 the first quarter, 25 the second, 24, whatever, and that's how they run every time, and they just happen to fall wherever that time puts them in a race. I totally disagree with that. I think horses run to where they're comfortable. They're herd animals by breed and by definition. and they find a place where they're comfortable. For this horse to be up on the pace after showing no speed whatsoever in his first couple races, regardless of what the fractions are, I think says something, because you can say that about Honor Code. Well, tell me about the other 10 horses in the race, the other 8 horses in the race then. Why weren't they up on it in 25? You know, they still fell back into where they normally would fall into a race. So he was able to do something that he hadn't shown on paper, and typically this would have been a good excuse for him to lose. This is a horse who dropped back 14, dropped back 11 in his first 2 starts. If he goes to that same running style and they run those fractions in front of him, there's no way in the world he gets anywhere close to the win picture. So, you know, you have to say, you know, this is a plus for an inexperienced horse making his first 2-turn start. And the pedigree on him, you know, this is the thing that I've always wondered about. You know, Serena's Cat, his mama, was a great 5-furlong turf sprinter. Will she be able to produce a classic distance horse? We know now a mile and an eighth works, but this mile and an eighth was run more like a 3-furlong sprint, like a turf race, because they walked so bad early and flew home late. It'll be interesting to see Honor Code in a half mile in 47, 6 furlongs in 110. Can he close into a race like that? Is he really a classic distance horse? But right now, he's the best 2-year-old we've got in America, I think, and he's very, very good, and he's in the right hands with Shug McGahee. Another one out of that race I really, really liked was Wicked Strong.
Yeah.
I thought he had one of those herky-jerky trips, never really got able to uncork. He's got that beautiful pedigree that I absolutely love. Speed on top by Hard Spun, stamina on the bottom out of a charismatic mare. This is a horse who's got the right tools. Jimmy Jerkins, we know, with a good horse can do some good things, but he's not going to push a horse like a Quality Road and some of the horses he's had over the years early in that 3-year-old year. But I will say this, Wicked Strong is going to make some serious noise somewhere at Gulfstream this winter.
Yeah, that was definitely an impressive third-place finish. We watched him just a minute ago come under the wire, and he certainly impressed. Cairo Prince, again, another one we'll watch going forward as well. It was a quirky race. It's hard to know what to come away with, but I agree. I think the first 3 are ones I'm going to kind of watch going forward. All right, got about a minute left, but we did want to touch on also Kentucky Jockey Club. Get your thoughts on some other 2-year-olds that we'll may be keeping our eyes on as the calendar turns. Kentucky Jockey Club, as they come down the stretch, we're going to see the Asmussen Winchell runner get it done. Number 6, Tapiture, gets it done pretty easily at 3-1. This is a horse that was a maiden coming into the race, but in the maiden debut up at Saratoga, finished second to Strong Mandate. Second career start, a close-up third in the Iroquois. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment last time at Churchill prior to this race, but followed up in the 4th career start, showing the talent that was promised maybe in that career Saratoga debut. Tapiture, interesting, coming out of the Kentucky Jockey Club.
Yeah, he's going to have questions getting a longer distance out of an Olympio mare, and the Tapits really, to me, haven't been able to get super long distances. He was ridden out hard in this race. What his win and what Honor Code's win do is flatter the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. You mentioned Strong Mandate, and then Honor Code obviously running second to Havana. Those 2 horses came back to run 2-3 in the Juvenile, and I think we're looking at a pretty strong Breeders' Cup Juvenile this year moving forward. Closer to what we saw 2 years ago when the Juvenile was very good, and not last year when the Juvenile was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and before I let you go, let me just ask if there was anything else on that 2-year-old card that stepped out. I showed earlier today Bourbon Eyes. A couple of days ago, I showed Gold Hawk, who was from those same Asmussen Winchell connections. A couple of first-time debut winners on that Stars at Tomorrow card. Anything jump out at you?
Well, I actually think, the Asmussen firster you're talking about probably has a little bit more appeal to me long-term than Tapiture. Tapiture, to me, looks like a win-early 2-year-old who did what he was supposed to do. He broke his maiden here. He's twice stakes played. I just don't see him stretching out too long. I think he's a horse maybe in the Lecomte at Fairgrounds, but not for the Louisiana Derby when they get further.
All right, sounds good. Jeremy, as always, we appreciated the visit this morning, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, have a great week, everyone.
Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com in Night School. Night School, again, as Jeremy said, wrapped up for the season, but you can catch the archives. Go to HorsePlayerNow.com and you can link there. All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, Mike Henry of Tampa Bay Downs. It's opening day, everybody. Stay tuned.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night School, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Cassano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Good morning and welcome back to Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. As noted before the break, opening day down at Tampa. So we've tapped in and called up Mike Henry from Tampa Bay Downs. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Seth. How are you today?
Very good. Excited to have you on. We had the Handicappers Report earlier where we go over a couple of tracks for the afternoon. I looked at Aqueduct, but my colleague Anthony Mormino, he was lucky enough to be able to look at Tampa Bay Downs for this afternoon. I guarantee I will be playing. I really enjoy Tampa. I wasn't able to make a personal visit last year, but typically in the winter I get down a few times. Really enjoy being there, but also in the wintertime up here in the Northeast, just enjoy watching Tampa. So we're excited about opening day, and I'm assuming there's a lot of excitement down there.
Well, Seth, you would be excited to be here today. We've got Chamber of Commerce weather. It's about 75 degrees, gentle breezes from the south. We have a real nice 9-race card, and our feature race is an allowance optional claiming, which has 5 of the 8 horses that are stakes winners. So it's a good card, and I think people are really going to enjoy what we're sending out today.
Absolutely. And Mike, we're just going to do a little meet preview now. You've got some new things, some new faces maybe down there. We'll touch on some of those. One of the things I want to bring up right at the beginning, and while we do that, I'm going to pull up some video from this year's Tampa Bay Derby, always the highlight of your meet. Grade 2 event, $350,000 purse this year, going 1 1/16 on that Tampa main track. And this year, it was the very talented Verrazano. We're going to watch number 6, Verrazano, come down the stretch under John Velazquez. Todd Pletcher, of course, the trainer. Verrazano subsequently went on to put in one of the best performances of the season in the Haskell. Verrazano winning the 2013 Tampa Bay Derby. And this year, in conjunction with the stakes races and the Tampa Bay Derby, you have a really fun bonus program.
Yes, Verrazano got all the acclaim last year, but it was interesting to note that the second and third place finishers, Java's War and Falling Sky, also got into the Kentucky Derby field. And based on that and the upgrades to the Derby and the Sam F. Davis Stakes over the last several years, we are introducing the Tampa Bay Downs $1 Million Derby bonus. And any horse that is talented and fortunate enough to win the Sam Davis Stakes on February 1st, the Tampa Bay Derby on March 8th, and the Kentucky Derby, their owners will win $1 million. But also along with that, we have a fan bonus in which after the Sam Davis Stakes, the winning jockey will select the name of one of the fans who has correctly picked the Sam Davis winner and filled out the appropriate card and put in the appropriate bin. And then that fan will remain eligible for a $100,000 bonus should the horse go on to win the Tampa Bay Derby and the Kentucky Derby. So it's almost going to be like you own a part of that horse, and I think it'll create tremendous excitement.
Oh, absolutely. After the Sam F. Davis, I'm sure everybody will be looking for that winner to go on and do well in the Tampa Bay Derby. And if so, that $1 million hanging out there entering the starting gate on the first Saturday in May will certainly add some fan attention and interest particularly for the for someone who potentially has that ticket for $100K down there. So that sounds like a lot of fun. The on-track bonus and then the fan bonus as well. Mike, let's get into the 2013-2014 season, which kicks off today. Let's talk a little bit about the wagering menu. We all like to know what we're playing, and it looks like pretty much the wagering menu stays the same as what we've seen in past years.
It has remained intact from last year, Seth. Now our Pick 5, which involves picking the winners of the last 5 races, has a ridiculously low takeout of 15%. But all of our takeouts are very competitive. They are the same as last year, as I mentioned. And we have Super High 5 on 2 races every day, in addition to Superfecta, Trifecta, and Exact and Win, Place, and Show. We have rolling Pick 3s throughout the day and Pick 4s. So I think all those wagers have proved popular over the years, but I think the Pick 5 is gaining in popularity because of that low takeout.
Yeah, it seems like the Pick 5 all across the country is getting some traction, and to the detriment maybe of the Pick 6. I think the whales may be looking, and they're a little envious here, because typically the Pick 5, of course, has those smaller increments, which plays to a lot of, certainly guys like me. I like to jump in at those 50-cent levels on some of these wagers, so it is attracting some nice attention, and certainly will do so down at Tampa, where I think a lot of folks, as I say, I know up in here, a lot of our focus is down there in the wintertime, because you certainly get to still play some nice turf racing as well. Mike, let's turn our attention to the human side. First off, let's look at the trainers. Jamie Ness, I know there was a Daily Racing Form article when Ness said he may not be as loaded this year as he has in years past, and he took a look at the foal crop and pointed to that, which has certainly been significant in the racing industry over the past couple of years. I had never heard a trainer point to it, but he's a guy who plays the claiming game. But I still wonder, I think Jamie Ness maybe playing it a little close to the vest, because I still think he's a talented guy, teamed up with Midwest Thoroughbreds. You have to think he's still going to be potent down there. But in the trainer ranks, who should we keep our eyes on?
Well, Jamie's a straight shooter, so I'm never going to accuse him of blowing smoke. But he is the favorite going in, no doubt about it. He has won 7 consecutive titles here. He's 1 title away from tying the all-time record overall, which was set by the late John Rice with 8 titles. But, I think trainers such as Gerald Bennett, who tied Jamie for the title a couple years ago, Kathleen O'Connell, who did the same, and as you know, ran her nice filly in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies, Scandalous Act, perhaps didn't get the best of trips, and Gerald Bennett's son, Dale Bennett, who, due to the herpes virus last year, was unable to race at Tampa. His horses have looked really good training in the morning. I think those are going to be the main competitors, the main challengers, and some of the others who will maybe fly under the radar a little and maybe don't have quite the numbers. Trainers such as Bernell Roan from Minnesota, Chad Stewart, who has really come on the last few years, and Jason DaCosta, who races in South Florida as well as here, and won about 30% of his races last year. I think they're all going to give Jamie a run for his money. At the end of the meet, you'll know that they have done a tremendous job if they do finish ahead of him.
Yeah, and you got some really interesting new faces, too. You got Owen Hardy, Dane Kabisky, and Tim Ice. And Kabisky, to me, is a really interesting guy who primarily is up in that Maryland circuit. Used to be a jockey and had a little bit of a career. I think it was one of those cases where he maybe just outgrew the jockey's room. But as a trainer, he's been kind of interesting. So some new faces to keep our eyes on. Let's, speaking of jockeys, shift our attention there. Daniel Centino, looks like, speaking of Maryland, Daniel Centino, a perennial leader down there at Tampa, will stick in Maryland. I'm wondering about January if he doesn't look down and see the warm weather and turns up down at Tampa Bay again. But there's still some really interesting names. De La Cruz, Ronnie Allen, Angel Serpa will be interesting. And speaking of De La Cruz, who we see on the left here on your screen, folks, has a career milestone sitting out there that potentially he could chase today, correct?
He's named on 7 today, and he is seeking his 1,000th career victory, and he was a real revelation to our fans here last year. He won 75 races and had continued his success up north. Ronnie Allen is a guy who's won 4 titles here, Seth, and you can never count him out. I think he knows this track better than anyone. And Angel Serpa told me the other day that the plan is to make a run for the riding title here, which he's kind of challenged for the last 2 years and then left a little early to pursue other venues. Another guy to watch is Scott Spieth. And, Scott has over 4,000 victories in his career. He's a challenger everywhere he runs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun watching that jockeys battle down there at Tampa Bay, as I say.
Let me also mention, Seth, not to interrupt you there, is Dean Butler, because he won the title up at Canterbury, and Dean's a guy that can fly under the radar a little, but he's a very talented and consistent rider.
And you mentioned Canterbury, and it was funny, my partner, as I say, we did the handicapping show earlier, and my partner did Tampa Bay, and as he went through the first couple of races, you know, when you mentioned Canterbury, I brought it up, we were amazed because, as he said, you're not on a traditional circuit. Tampa Bay's kind of out there as a little bit of a wintertime island, and we were amazed the first couple of races, the number of different venues horses were coming from their last race. You know, we were looking at Colonial, Hawthorne, New York, the Kentucky circuit. They're coming in from all over, which makes it ultra competitive. Should be a lot of value there in the first couple of weeks.
Well, and it does make it a different kind of handicapping challenge than people are used to. You can go through the speed figures and the buyer figures and times and running styles, and all of this is very reliable and useful information. But until they get here and until you see how they adapt to the Tampa surface, which has been described as a little quirky, it's kind of a deep sand-based surface in large measure, and it's very friendly to the horses and very forgiving. But until they get a couple races under their belt, a lot of them you don't know how they're going to adapt to the surface. Ditto for the jockeys who have never ridden here. So it's a great handicapping challenge, and I think that's what attracts so many people over the years.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and that adds to the fun. Speaking of jockeys, I just want to go back for a moment because this is another thing we talked about on the handicapping show earlier. There was a 10-pound apprentice named on a couple of horses, A. Solis. I don't know if you know this, but do you have the answer? Is he any relation to Alex Solis? Do you know?
Well, I did look it up. He is a son of Alex Solis.
Okay.
He's ridden 2 races in his career. I think they were both at Gulfstream. I have not met the young man yet, but he is going for his first career victory. And in the first race, now I'm not allowed to tout here over the radio, but in the first race, he's on a horse trained by Dennis Ward, who's a pretty successful trainer here. And the horse is dropping from 10,000 claiming to 5,000 claiming. Might be one to look at, and I told our track photographer, because you know the tradition of the jockeys being initiated after their first win, I told her to remember to wear a raincoat today just in case.
Yeah, good. And I always I publish the Equidaily website, and I always like to put up those pictures after the first career win of the jockeys, because it is certainly a lot of fun and a great story that people like to follow. Before we let you go, Mike, do want to let folks know, certainly a lot of our viewers up here in this area, they're snowbirds, and they get down in the Tampa area. And as I say, I like to visit Tampa Bay Downs when possible. You've had some facility upgrades, so for folks who are visiting, what might be new down there?
I'll tell you, it's absolutely beautiful what the staff here under Vice President Tom McLaughlin has done. We have a new Riders Up pub on the first floor of the grandstand, which is going to be a real eclectic gathering place for horsemen and bettors and trainers and jockeys and just anyone who wants to unwind after the races or during the races and enjoy a libation and some snacks and have a great view of the finish line. And then we have the Metro Deli, which is also on the first floor of the grandstand, and it's patterned after what they have at Qualcomm Stadium out in San Diego. And our new food and beverage director, Andy York, that was kind of his idea, and we think they're both going to be well received. And we've moved around some food offerings, so I think everyone is going to be very pleased and very surprised at what they find.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. It was a nice facility beforehand, and if you've upgraded, it certainly makes it better. I've said before, I enjoy my visits to Tampa. You guys were in the forefront, I think, just because of what you were before, but a lot of these facilities around the country now are kind of scaling down the size. But you've had that nice size for years and years, where even if you go on a weekday, there's a nice buzz there, and certainly it's very nice to be sitting there in the wintertime in short sleeves watching some horse racing. So again, good luck not only on opening day, but with the season. We'll certainly be checking in as we move along because, as I say, Tampa is squarely on our radar screen during the winter season. So again, good luck at the meet. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll catch up with you down the road.
Thank you so much, Seth. Great to talk with you. Enjoy.
You too. Mike Henry from Tampa Bay Downs. A little earlier, Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com and Night School. And those were that was the guest lineup on the show this morning. Before we go, just do want to remind you one more time, because again, Capital Cup Championship here at the Clubhouse Racebook on Saturday is a qualifier for that Las Vegas tournament. And there was a good article. Pete Fornatale, now he was one of our guests up at Saratoga when we were live on the backstretch, and he talked. Actually, he was playing. I think we were on the morning of the Saratoga tournament, the Saratoga handicapping tournament that was on track up there this summer. And we talked a little bit about tournaments with him. He's now become a handicapping contest columnist for the Daily Racing Form. And Fornatale's latest column, which you can pick up, is kind of pick your spots. So your talent level may be better suited for some contests as opposed to others, and some contests also just have a more limited field. Some of these we had Gary Johnson yesterday, who is a veteran handicap contest player and has been out the championship in Vegas a number of times, and he said he went in the Breeders' Cup contest, which is essentially a contest for whales, and he said he thought he was a little bit out of his league out there on the Breeders' Cup weekend. And he's a guy who's, as I say, is very experienced and good at it. So you got to kind of pick your spots, and this, I think, is a very good spot to get to be eligible to go out to Vegas for the National Handicapping Championship. Capital Cup Championship, the last in a series of monthly contests in 2013 here at the Capital OTB Clubhouse Racebook. Saturday, December 7th, $200 entry fee, a maximum of 3 entries per person. You can find out more on capitalotb.com. And again, that's this Saturday, Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. That'll wrap things up for Racing Across America for Wednesday morning. We're here every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Also want to remind you, keep forgetting, over the past few weeks, we've added that YouTube channel where the shows are archived. If you go to capitalotb.com, bottom of the page, there's a YouTube link. If you ever miss Racing Across America, bam, go to our YouTube channel. They're all archived there. We're here every Monday through Friday from 10 to 11 a.m. Prior to that, it is the Handicappers Report, where we try to give you some ideas. So make some money this afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.